Let me share the file here. So, good evening. Hi, Sylvia. Good evening.
Olá.
So, we are continuing from the point we have stopped last week. So, any question, any comment, any complaint, please feel free to do so. Putting a stop to those surprising elucidations, Clarence added with a smile. You will learn new lessons here, and after instructive experiences, you will cooperate efficiently with us, preparing at the same time for your own progress towards the infinite. You have to remember that was a conversation between Andre Luiz and Clarence about the need they had to feel like, I want to be a doctor, I want to see, blah, blah, blah. And on the end of the day, he was not ready for it. I was overjoyed for the first time since my arrival at the colony. I cried out for pure happiness. Who on earth would understand such emotions? Still, I felt it necessary to quiet my heart to enter the sublimity of divine silence. That was just the end of this chapter. We moving on for the chapter 15. My mother's visit. Following Clarence's advice, I tried hard to restore my strength in order to start my apprenticeship as soon as possible. In the old days, I might have taken offense at the minister's seemingly harsh remarks, but under the circumstances, recollecting my past errors, I could only feel comforted. Strangers, and every time we hear something a bit more assertive about us, it's something like a little power kicking out, like, I don't like this, I don't like to hear that. Quite often it's because when we hear something that's very straight to the point, sometimes we feel like, oh, it's hurting me. But that's with everyone. As a prisoner of the flesh, the soul is almost always wrapped in thick mist of illusions. Only now I did realize that an earthly life cannot be lived thoughtlessness. Oh, that's not an easy word to say. Thoughtlessly.
Thoughtlessly.
Yeah.
Thoughtlessly.
Yeah, almost like that. The real importance of an incarnation loomed clearly before my eyes. Remembering all the opportunities I had wasted, I recognized that Clarence had plenty of reason to have spoken to me as he had. I spent many days immersed in contemplation, although I refrained from asking for any more concessions. That's something that we are very good in perpetuated. We'll always like to have concessions for us. Deep in my heart, I longed to visit my earthly home. The benefactors of the Ministry of Assistance had been extremely generous to me and seemed to follow all of my thoughts. Therefore, if they did not spontaneously grant such a wish, it must be because the time had not yet come for it. We see quite often in the mediumship meetings, spirits, discarnated spirits that are suffering from the distance from home. it's very difficult to show them that if they remain inside their home, close to the loved ones, sometimes even when they do not intend to create harm, they do. I understand the other side of the coin. We want to be closer to those we love, we miss them. But if we truly love them, we don't want to be with them if we make them cry, if we are passing some fluids that are not very positive. But it's very hard to comprehend when we are in that situation. The benefactors of the Ministry of Assistance have been extremely generous to me and seem to follow all my thoughts. I'm repeating here because I just had a warning again that my internet is not very good. So I don't know if what I said was captured. And I beg your pardon for that. The internet in the hotel is not very good. Therefore, if they did not spontaneously grant such a wish, it was the time had not yet come. I resigned, though somewhat wistful. Lysias did his best to cheer me up with his lively conversations and encouraging remarks. But I was going through that phase of spiritual retreat when a man retires within himself to face his innermost conscience. One day, however, my attendant came into my room and exclaimed, "Guess who has come to see you?" Lysia's smiling face and sparkling eyes gave him away. "My mother," I exclaimed confidentially. Stunned with joy, I saw my mother approaching with outstretched arms. My child, come into my arms, my dear one." I cannot describe what happened then. All of a sudden, I felt like a little boy who used to play in the rain, barefoot in the sandy soil of our garden. In that sacred and joyful moment, I held her tenderly in my arms until even our tears blended. I cannot say how long we remained that way, but at last she broke the enchantment. I could only imagine the sensation to see a mother, a father, after so many years, knowing that they had been also disconnected. Very interesting.
Yeah, can I make a comment on the when he was talking about he coming to the realization that he wanted to go visit his earthly home, and in the paragraph above, he was saying how he had, because of contemplation. So because he is a guy that he likes to ask a lot, right? He asked a lot of things, and he found himself in deep contemplation, and that's how when we realize that the missed opportunities on earth and how earthly life was actually supposed to be lived in a different way than what he did. And from that realization, he put himself in a more humble position to know not to ask or not to allow his wishes or the things that he wanted to, to ask for and to chase people or whatever, try to find. And do we have that? I think, do we actually stop to reflect upon the things we study and we learn and we read and so on, to the point that we change the way we behave in certain situations based on those reflections. That is, on two paragraphs, in a very subtle way, a lesson on itself. When he said that I think before he entered the room or the ministry, he put himself in peace, even though he wanted to ask for this or do that. He was like, he knew it wasn't time yet, because if it had been time, the ministries would have talked to him and would have allowed him and so on. So it's just the trust and the understanding and the things happen for a reason, and there's a bigger order above us, and having that understanding and knowledge to the point where you change or control your impulse or the way you behave and so on in such situation. That was a lesson itself. That's what I just wanted to make a comment.
Rafael, I think we could learn more if we pay attention on the true meaning of what we read. Why I'm saying that? Every time I read Andre Luiz again, I see something that I haven't seen before. The very same book. And I'm pretty sure there are lots and lots of things I couldn't see yet, and they're still there. Perhaps because I don't want to pay attention to them, or the hidden message, if I can say like that, is not something I want to really find, because that will make me think, that will make me evaluate how things could be different, you know. But a very true answer is that there's a lot of things on those pages that could make a massive impact on us if we decide to take the lessons on board. I hope, I prefer to believe that my answer to your initial question is yes. But when I look inside myself or look behind me, I could say honestly that I could pay more attention when I'm reading. And through the examples given by him in this book or any other spirit in other books, it could make my life easier, could minimize my sufferings. But as a stubborn being like I am, I don't pay attention to it. Only when it hurts, oh dear, I saw that in that book, blah, blah, blah. But then it hurts already, you know.
Guilherme, I find quite interesting that he said, like, by the time, I think just before his mama come to visit him, he was like looking inside himself, like when contemplating, like, so that was the moment that, okay, his mama came. I find quite interesting that.
I was about to say the same thing. I was about to say, we cannot know, but it seems that there could be a correlation between he was finally ready. And how do we know that he was finally ready to receive his mother in a way that wouldn't be problematic for him or her? Probably more for him than for her. But he just described that he could find himself accepting the reality that he understood, look, if I'm not able to go to Earth now, it's because I'm not ready. There are bigger things I need to work on. There are bigger realizations I need to do. Only in these moments that he's describing to us that he, I guess, accepted a bit more, understand a bit more the missed opportunity, the position he's in because of his actions, the missed opportunities and so on. is it a coincidence that that's the moment that his mother then is allowed to come and visit him? I think there could be, there's probably a big correlation there.
I don't believe in coincidences. And if we do refer to our mediumship practices, we will see that sometimes we are in a hole, sometimes we are lost for years, decades, and only when we allow ourselves to change a little bit, but this little bit is already enough to allow the spirits to be seen, to allow the help to come. And I don't particularly think that was just a coincidence with Andre Luiz either. Because, by the way, thanks a lot to point me that, because I have missed. I would not talk about it. I would go straight away. But I believe was his mindset change that allow his mother to be granted the opportunity, well, the other way around, to allow him to be granted the opportunity to see his mother. Right? You see what I said a few minutes ago, that we only see what we want to see. I was passing through this. So you see how it's important to study together. That's very good. That's very good.
Good spot. Go ahead.
I also wanted to make a comment in relation to what Denise and Rafael observed. On a general level, what does that tell us about family reunification in the spiritual realm? Many of us, we have this illusion that, or we console ourselves by saying that when we in the spiritual world, we're going to be reunited with our family members, but we don't take into consideration all these nuances, you know, like you said, Guilherme, or the state of our mind. Are we really ready to meet as God decides what ready is or when ready is? But we like to console ourselves that, okay, I'm going to meet my family. We're going to be reunited all again. But it can take years. It can take centuries. And it really all depends on us. But like, you know, our religious teachings are very simplistic when it comes to that side of things, in explaining to us that, okay, when we die, we're going to be reunited with our family members, end of story.
Ebony, you remind me something that happened many years ago. We were having a kind of lecture, and we had a couple that they were a bit upset in something I said, because everyone wants to die and be together. Husband, wife, son, daughter, whatever, they want to be together. And I explained that's not really like that. They were not happy. Yeah. They were definitely not happy. And we don't know. We really do not know. So the best thing we can do is to work hard to make it happen. But in a couple, for example, you do everything right. You have your commitment, you do your part, and your husband does everything different, does everything wrong. Imagine if you guys gonna be in the same place. You will not. You will not, you know? So it's just an example, you know? So it's very hard to conceive that. It's very hard to conceive that. But yeah, it's a very good point. Very good point. So let me continue a little bit. Now, my boy, don't give a free rein to your emotions. Now let me stop here straight away. Andre Luiz was years in Astral City. He was already helping. He had found, we can say, a certain level of balance. But depending on the degree of emotion he could be experiencing with his mother or family, all the hard work he have done could be compromised. And so just shut down my WhatsApp here because it is clicking and clicking. I'm sorry. Great. So you know that even excessive happiness taxes the heart. And that's very interesting, isn't it? We think that we can have all the happiness in the world, but too much happiness will add additional burden on you too, will take you out of your balance. You are still weak. Do not waste your energy. Do not waste your energy. So his mother was concerned. Yes?
Sorry to interrupt you. So
yes,
here, this is what they meant by if your emotions take over, you get unbalanced and then you can get bad vibrations. How does it work? Like if you have, if don't give free rein to emotions, tax the heart, you lose your balance and then you can get into the wrong vibration, something like that. I don't really understand.
Let me try to give an example. You are driving your car. Suddenly, someone crosses in front of you and he starts to say you nice words. If you get those words on board, regardless if you are a very nice person, if you have a high, let's say a high level of self-esteem, that may affect you. You will increase your heart rate. You may be upset. You may have your hands a bit shaking because you are so upset with what the person said. The person was wrong. Regardless, the person was telling you that nasty thing, you know? That is in a bad way. Let's think about someone you love so much, and you do not see them for 20 years. And they knock on your door, and when you open the door, you see them. You will be very, very happy, but your heartbeat will be different. Your emotions may take over. You may even faint, and you are happy. You are very happy. But as your heartbeat have changed, as your systems start to shut down, that massive happiness was not positive for you. And in case of Andre Luiz, because he was recovering, an eventual shutdown could compromise part of the work he has achieved over the years. Let's think about something else now here. Let's say that I'm alcoholic. I'm doing 10 years now, not drinking a single drop of alcohol. If I drink one glass of wine, it's not going to create any harm to my body, but may create a massive harm to my spirit, because that could be the restart of all the troubles again. So it's better not to do it, or at least you have to be better. You have to be on 100% control of everything around you before you do something like that. So these are some thoughts that came to my mind, and we all, I think it's fair to say, we all have problems in regards to our emotions. Could be my wife, could be my son, could be my mother. There's always something that triggers the best and the worst of us. So if I am recovering from a heart surgery, for example, it's better to be very careful with who I will allow to visit me in the hospital, because I don't want to have a second one, right? So
Okay.
it's the type of thing that I'm thinking.
Okay, thank you.
Instead of carrying my dear old mother in my arms, as I had done in the last weeks of her passage on earth, it was she who dried my tears and led me to the couch. I sat down beside her and laid my head tenderly on her knees. She stroked my hair gently, recounting precious memories. I felt at the moment that I was the happiest of men. I had the impression of being anchored in the safest of harbors after a hard struggle on the stormy seas. He's making a reference to the time he was in the lower zone, right? My mother's presence was a great comfort to my heart, and those moments seemed like a blissful dream, like a little boy looking for comfort in familiar objects. I attentively observed her clothes, a perfect copy of those she used to wear at home. I recognized the dark dress, the blue shawl, the woolen stockings. I gazed at her small head crowned with snow white hair, at the wrinkles on her face, at her invariably sweet and calm expression. Speechless and trembling with joy, I stroked her hands, while she, stronger than I, spoke serenely. The Lord never forget us, my child. We shall never be able to thank him for all of his kindness. I think we forget that too often, isn't it? I think so. How long our separation has been, but you must not think that I had forgotten you. Sometimes providence parts us temporarily so that we may learn divine love. Sometimes we are obliged to live with distance, distance from the loved ones, distance from comfort. But everything is part of a learning process. Everything has God's will behind it. Feeling that her affections was the same as ever, I began to recall again the sting of old grievances. Remember Denise, he was very happy, but in a flick of coin, he started to have thoughts that were not very happy just because of her. He was very happy having her there.
Mm-hmm.
But people's mind is very, very risky. Oh, how difficult it is to get rid of earthly residues. How heavy is the burden of centuries of imperfections. Clarence had often exhorted me to refrain from lamenting. Lysias, oh, this is something here very complicated. I bet nobody here used to do that, lamenting. We don't do that, do we? I don't think so. We are always so happy. Oh dear.
I love to complain.
Lysias too had spared me his warnings. Yet, now resting in my mother's arms, all my old wounds seem to be bleeding again. I would not pay attention on this if it wasn't because of you guys, because of that comment on the beginning. So he was recovered. He was feeling well. He deserved the visit of the mother, his mother. And yet, her presence started to hurt him again. Not because of her, but perhaps because of what she used to represent, or because of some experiences they had together. I don't know. It's very interesting. I started to bitterly recall my past sufferings, and my tears of joy gave way to those of self-pity. I did not realize, well, let me stop here, self-pity. This could be a bit complicated, right? We never think we are guilty of anything. We always think we are innocent people. I'm a good person, I'm innocent people. And as a consequence of that, sometimes I start to create that feeling of self-pity. I start to build up that sentiment on us, that start to build up on us as a result of need of attention, as a result of I'm better than everybody else. So that's a sentiment that is kind of complicated, even to me, to evaluate it. Because I think that I have self-pity as well sometimes. I think we all do. When we are trying to get that bit of attention of someone we love or something like that. So it is something present in our lives, but it's something we should try at least to control better. I did not realize then that her visit was not to be taken simply for gratification of my whims, but as one more blessing from the divine mercy, relapsing into my old habit of making my mother the patient victim of my endless grievances. Ooh, he used to complain. She used to be the one listening to all complaints he had. And now began to painfully recount all of my past tribulations. On earth, mothers are often merely slaves in their children's eyes. That's very true. Very rare are those who realize the value of their mother's devotion before being deprived of it. I had been no exception. If everything happens normally, we're going to lose our mother before we go, right? She will pass to the other side before we go. And then that's the time when we will do a quick evaluation if we did everything we should when she was closer. When we make questions like that, sometimes we don't have an easy answer. My mother listened, and in silence, her face clouded by an expression of indescribable sadness. Hold me tight to her heart, her eyes full of tears, she spoke tenderly. Oh, my son, don't complain. Didn't our generous Clarence give you sound advice on that subject? Let's be thankful for our Father for this blessed meeting. Let's never forget we are now in a different school, learning to become true children of God. As a mother on earth, I didn't always succeed in guiding you in the best way. Therefore, I too am working to control my feelings by readjusting my heart. So now, let me finish here and then I'll make that comment. but your tears are steering my old earthly feelings, drawing me back into a path I have already trodden. I should like to believe your complaints justified, to set up as a most virtuous creature in the universe, but it would be out of accordance with the new lessons we are learning. In the world, one might take allowances for such behavior. He is quite impossible. Interesting. That encounter was not only making him suffer, but also start to affect his mother. And we know through previous information that she's way better than he is. That showed to us how spirits are pretty much humans like we are. They have feelings, they have difficulties, they have joy. Sometimes we create spirits like super beings, but they are not.
I like, Guilherme, how they say to control my feelings. If you go up a little bit, she said, I control my feelings by readjusting my heart. I found that quite strong. So like, even she needs to control her feeling, readjusting her heart, maybe like just keep her heart in check and control, so she can control her feelings as well.
A friend of mine gave an advice recently that every time we start to feel anxious, we have to breathe calmly, deeply and calmly. Because when we start to be anxious, this is our brain. Is our brain receiving the signal from the heart. So when we start to breathe slowly, we start to re-equilibrate the heartbeat. If we don't do anything to stop that signal from the heart to arrive in the brain will send a counter signal. Something is wrong in your heart. So the brain will send a different signal to you. Then your heart will beat even faster. So next stop, you will faint. You will think you're dying. You think you're having a heart attack, and then your brain will react even worse. You send more signals, and you become a mess. So I think that's why she was saying, readjust my heart, because she felt like my heart beating is booming now. I'm losing control. If I lose control, I may start to compromise my balance. Like
a comment about something I'm observing here in that last paragraph. To me, she's not making any, she doesn't have any pretension about how she raised her son. She seems to be reflecting on the fact that she too made mistakes, you know, in how she raised him. Perhaps she might have spoiled him. And perhaps even that contributed to him being the way he is. So she is, in a way, taking responsibility for that, and she's encouraging him to do the same thing. You know, if, you know, here she says that on earth, certain things are acceptable, things that we do as parents, but here you have to, you ought to make that kind of adjustment to know that you know, those kinds of behavior are not acceptable as parents. So it's just something that I observed.
I think I don't think she planned to have that kind of feeling coming. like that. But as she started to feel that, she recognized that she was also having trouble with that because of what they had. And I think that's very positive. I think that's very positive. But I don't think she was kind of, I want to see my son because I want to remember that kind of thing. I think it's more like, I want to see my son. Oh dear. He's making me think about those things I am not proud of as well, you know? So yeah, who knows?
But isn't that what true love does? In the presence of true love, it forces you to face yourself. And it's actually very cleansing. I think that's a moment that they're both having. His mom loves him very much. He loves his mother, you know, and as they both meet, like you said, it's not something that they plan to happen. But in the presence of love, these things do happen. You reflect, and you find yourself reliving a lot of the things that you did. And in the process, you know, it's purifying.
It's a moment of realization, right? Like maybe out of the so-called maternal love, she treated him or used to treat him in one way, and she's now realizing that perhaps there was a bit a bit of a misunderstanding. It's also telling us that old habits die hard, because even for spirits that are more enlightened, like she is in this context, it doesn't take away the challenges and the problems and the issues that she has and she's still working on. Like, for example, being overprotective is not the word, but like being overly maternally, I guess, to a spirit who was her son in the past life.
I hear what you guys are saying, but I'll tell you something. The day I find my mother, I want her to have a gift. I don't want her to tell me what I know already. Mom, give me a gift. A nice gift.
It's because she did wrong, thinking she was loving you. She was actually spoiling you.
Mm-hmm.
So she did it wrong.
Oh, yeah.
We must, oh, sorry. But till tears are still in my old heart feelings, oh, you read that. So we must consider the Lord before everything else. You aren't the only discarnate man redeeming his errors, nor am I the only mother parted from her loved ones. The merit of your suffering, my son, doesn't lie in the tears it makes us shed, nor in the bleeding wounds it inflicts on us, but in the gateway of light it opens up to us. But in the gateway of light, it opens up to us. Yeah, she was bringing like, well, stop with that. That's enough. So now let's move on. Let's look up. Let's look at the light. Tears and wounds are only blessed means of helping us to purify our soul. After a prolonged pause, during which my conscience addressed me firmly, she resumed. Why not enjoy these fleeting moments in the sunshine of love, instead of wasting them in the shadows of unhappiness? Let's serve my child and serve cheerfully, while at the same time constantly rejoicing in the Lord. Change your mental attitude, I beg you. This is not easy to anyone. Change our mental attitude. I think it's fair to say that the great majority of our problems lie here. Our confidence in my love and your affection for me bring me sublime happiness, but I can return to experiences which have passed. We must love each other now with a great and sacred divine love. So the biggest message she's giving to him is the past remains in the past. Let's move on. A lot of people will see and seek help from us. It's because they are living in the past. What you did is done. You won't be able to do anything else about it. You'll be able to change yourself from now on, but the past is the past. Those inspiring words awakened me, and I had the impression that my mother's love radiated invigorating fluids which lift my heart. She gazed at me contentedly, transfigured by a radiant smile, and as I rose and respectfully kissed her forehead, it struck me that I had never before seen her so beautiful and so loving. Interesting. Yeah. What time is it? I'll still have 13 minutes. A confidential talk, chapter 16. My mother's words comforted and encouraged me considerably. She prescribed work as a lenitive to my suffering and tribulations, which she regarded as blessings and valuable lessons. We had a study before this one here, and funny enough, we spoke about that here. She prescribed work as a lenitive to my sufferings and tribulations. So we have that information from several different places telling us to overcome any problem is work. An inevitable contentment unexpectedly filled my spirit. Those maternal admonitions seemed to give me new strength. Losing internet, no good. I felt a different man, more cheerful, lively, and happy. Oh, mother, I said, how wonderful the plane where you live must be. What sublime spiritual thoughts, what bliss. She smiled, knowingly and at higher sphere, my child, always requires more work and greater devotion. So, if any of you is planning to have a future in a very high place, it's better be prepared to work, right? So if the only way to achieve those places is to work, so it's better start to work now, even when you're here on Earth. You mustn't imagine that your mother spends her time in spiritual ecstasy, exempt from all meritorious tasks. I don't mean to convey the least shadow of sadness or discontentment about the situation in which I find myself, but rather to review my new responsibility to you. Since I returned from Earth, I have been working incessantly, like that, for our spiritual regeneration. Many entities, on leaving their physical bodies, remain bound to their earthly home, unable to break away from their loved ones. Here, however, I have learned that one who truly loves must work constantly in order to be able to serve. Therefore, since my arrival here, I have been trying hard to obtain the privilege of helping those we so dearly cherish. I had an example quite a number of years ago. when a mother passed away and she came for a quick communication and she was concerned about her son. And I remember that the indoctrinator told her, keep working very hard as you used to do when you were on earth, because that will give you an extra credit to perhaps even help your son. We know that we all have merits and demerits, and in theory, things that happen to us are results of all credit. But sometimes if someone that loves us has a credit, he or she can always interfere and help us a little bit. So that, I don't know why that came to my mind. And my father, I asked, where is he? I think that's going to in line with what Ebony said, I think. Why hasn't he come with you? My mother's face bore a strange expression as she replied, alas, your father, for 12 years he has been caught in a dense session of the shadows of the lower zone. On earth, he always gave us the impression of being faithful to family traditions and meticulous in the observance of the ethical code of the upper business circles he belonged to until the end of his days. Outwardly, he seemed to possess a strong religious faith, but in reality, he was weak. He maintained clandestine liaisons outside our home. Two of his connections were women who were mentally tied with a vast band of evil entities. So I think it was Ebony who was saying that, well, when someone dies, perhaps we're not going to be together. Is a primary example. Well, she thought he was nice, he was correct, 100%. He did a very good job pretending to his wife, to his family, but when he passed, there is no masks you can wear anymore. And then you may not be able to be together with those you love. When Laertes passes over, his stay in the lower zones became extremely painful. The unfortunate creatures to whom he had made vain promises were waiting eagerly to involve him in dark shrouds of illusion. At first, he tried to resist, to find me. He couldn't understand that the soul, after parting from its bodily form, will live the life of its essential nature without face appearances. So when we say that when we lose our physical body, the true self emerges because we cannot pretend anymore. The physical body is like a buffer, protect us against the spiritual world, the lower zone spiritual world, protect us from our family, our neighbors, because no one really knows what you're thinking, what you do. But when you lose your physical body, you cannot hide anymore. And then your vibration will dictate the place you're going to end up with. Laert, therefore, was unable to sense my spiritual presence or perceive the devoted assistance of some of our friends. How often we see in mediumship meetings spirits saying they were alone for too long, for years, decades. They were never alone. They are never alone. But they don't have means to perceive the presence around them. Having spent so many years pretending, he had damaged his psychic vision and restricted his vibratory range. In reality, I don't think the word is psychic. I think it's a spiritual vision. But quite often people mix psychic with the spiritual. Consequently, he found himself alone with those whom he had, oh, that same word again, thoughtlessly attuned.
There you
go. It's getting better. It's getting better. Attuned his heart and mind. For some time, oh dear, I have to stop. I'll stop here.
3 minutes.
With this wonderful word. Okay, I'll stop here till next week. So yeah, thanks a lot for your participation. You helped me out a lot. So I will stop our recording here. Stop sharing, stop recording. Oh,